Welcome. Tonight, we leave behind keyboards and glowing screens. We set down our pens and silence the hum of electricity. And in that quiet, we return to the world's very first writers, to Mesopotamia, where writing began not with poetry, but with lists. And the scribes who wrote them lived lives of precision, routine, and pressure. There were no books, no paper, just clay, water, an appointed reed, and endless repetition. Scribes did not speak much. They listened, counted, and remembered. Let your breath slow, and imagine waking in a small room, lit only by morning sun on wet clay. What it was really like to be a scribe. Your day begins before the city stirs. Outside, the walls of Uruk are still shadowed. A donkey brays in the distance. A woman sweeps the courtyard, but you are already awake, kneeling at a low bench, the scent of damp clay in your nose. You are a scribe, not a priest, not a laborer, but someone whose job is to remember. Before you is a flat square of raw clay, soft, cool to the touch, and beside it, your stylus, a trimmed reed, cut to a wedge. You dip it in water, press gently into the surface, and begin. One stroke, then another. Each mark has meaning, not letters, but shapes, cuneiform. Your teacher once said, "Every mistake dries forever." So, you work slowly, carefully. Your back aches by mid-morning. You stretch your fingers, then return to the list. Barley rations, clay bricks, goats, names, numbers, dates. You're not writing for poetry. You're writing for someone in power, a temple, a palace, a merchant. Sometimes you copy legal codes, sometimes debt records, sometimes omens. But always, you sit and scratch and smooth and press. Your fingernails stay red with dust, your sleeves stiff with clay. Outside, the city bustles, markets, carts, arguments. But inside your writing room, the only sound is the soft click of your stylus and the steady rhythm of thought. You are respected, but not celebrated. Trusted, but not praised. And when the tablet is done, you lay it in the sun to dry, then begin again. Because tomorrow, there will be more goats, more barley, more things to remember on slabs that will outlast your bones. The apprentice who defied the temple, his name was not recorded, but the fragments say he was young, barely into manhood, barely past the first 100 signs. He was one of dozens of scribal apprentices at the temple school in Nineveh, a prestigious city, a center of worship and scholarship. The temple trained its scribes like soldiers, with routine, repetition, and obedience. The boy learned the basics quickly: symbols for cattle, grain, kings, how to draw lines straight across damp clay, how to sit still for hours at a time. But he asked too many questions. Why use this word instead of that? Why must debt always be phrased the same way? Why not record the stories of those outside the temple? The headmaster warned him. Once, then again. Scribes, he said, are not poets. They are vessels. But the boy continued filling broken tablets after hours with verses, with names not on the ration lists, with a dream of writing for the people, not just the priesthood. One day, his wax tablet was found, not a ledger, not a contract, but a hymn to a river. It was beautiful, rhythmic, precise, but it was not authorized. The punishment was quiet. He was dismissed from the temple school, his name scratched off the student rolls, his stylus broken and left at the gates. No one knows what happened to him. Some say he joined a merchant house, writing inventory for trade caravans. Others believe he fled to a smaller city, teaching children to write in secret. And yet, centuries later, a single line was found on a discarded tablet fragment in a well. Let the river remember my name. If the temple forgets, just 6 symbols, in careful, even script, hidden under layers of clay and time. And whoever wrote it had not forgotten how to be a scribe. Buried tablets beneath the library at Nineveh, in the heart of the Assyrian Empire, in the once mighty city of Nineveh, stood a librarian. Not of books, but of tablets, tens of thousands of them stacked, shelved, sealed, most of them written centuries before, carried in from cities that no longer stood, languages that had faded, and gods that had been abandoned. It was the library of King Ash, a king who ruled with cruelty, but read with obsession. He ordered scribes to gather the wisdom of the world, medicine, astronomy, omens, hymns, laws. If it was written in clay, he wanted it copied, filed, preserved. One room, unearthed by archaeologists in the 19th century, contained over 600 broken tablets, each less than a hand's width wide. Many had been smashed in the fires that destroyed Nineveh, but even in ruin, they whispered. There were flood stories, dream interpretations, lists of stars, and one quiet letter from a junior scribe to his superior, reporting that 4 tablets had gone missing from the palace collection, possibly borrowed without record. The handwriting was small, neat, and anxious. It ended with a line, "I will search again at dawn." What's remarkable is not just the survival, but the detail. Each wedge-shaped mark, pressed into clay 2,700 years ago, still holds, still readable, still waiting. The walls have crumbled, the palace gone, but the memory of how people thought, what they feared, how they dreamed, remains, in shelves of earth, under fallen ceilings, beside tablets left half-finished. And when you look closely at one, you'll sometimes see fingerprints pressed gently into the corner, a mistake, or maybe a signature. And in that tiny swirl, the shape of a hand long gone. The scribes who wrote the king's lies in the courts of Mesopotamian kings, scribes did more than record taxes and contracts. They crafted image, they built legacy, and sometimes they lied, not with malice, but with purpose. One king, Sinsarisgun, ordered his scribes to write of his victory over an enemy who had not yet fallen. The war was still being fought, but the tablet declared triumph. Why? Because, by writing it, they helped make it true. In a world where a few could read, and even fewer could write, the scribe's stylus was more powerful than any blade. They were the architects of royal memory. One famous inscription, attributed to Hammurabi, declares him the shepherd of the people, the bringer of justice. Yet within the tablet, the laws favored landowners, temple elites, and punished the poor harshly. Still, it was copied, displayed, preserved, not because it was balanced, but because it was beautiful, and written in stone. There are letters from governors to kings, complaining that scribes had altered reports, leaving out famine, softening rebellions, padding numbers of soldiers. One letter ends simply with, "If this reaches you as written, then I fear your city more than the enemy." Even the Assyrian kings, brutal in warfare, were described as chosen by gods, merciful to the innocent, beloved by their people. A familiar pattern, and yet, those tablets are what survive. They shape how we remember, not because they were honest, but because the scribes made them durable. So as you sleep tonight, know this. Much of what we know about the ancient world was written by men sitting in silence, under orders, pressing styluses into clay to tell a story they did not choose. And in doing so, they shaped all the stories that came after. The quiet keepers of memory in ancient Mesopotamia, writing was not freedom, it was labor. It was the quiet act of remembering, so others could forget. The scribe rose early, sat still, listened more than he spoke, and captured the world in small, exact strokes. He did not choose what to write, he did not own the words, but he made them last. The temple needed him, the palace relied on him, the merchants feared his records, the courts depended on his ledgers, yet he lived in the shadows, between markets and kings, between truth and duty. The stylus was not sharp, but it could cut, and the clay was soft, but it held time. So tonight as you drift into sleep, remember the hands that pressed history into earth, not for glory, not for story, but because it was their task. And know this, long after the walls have crumbled, long after the gods have changed, the words remain. In symbols, in shards, in silence. Thank you for listening, and sleep well, with quiet history.